Hi, welcome to Parrot and Wolf. Today we're going to talk about the word if in English. Now we use if in sentences to talk about results of actions, and these results only happen when we have a specific situation or condition. If sentences are often called conditionals, and there are different types of conditionals depending on what we want to say and what situation we want to describe. So the word if is used to describe 4 situations: facts, future events, imaginary events, and past events. This may sound a little strange and a bit confusing to begin with, but it gets much easier after a little practice, I promise, so don't worry. Let's look at if to describe facts first. If it rains, I wear a raincoat. This is a general fact and describes a situation and result that always happens. The sentence is made up of 2 parts. The first part is if it rains and describes the situation. The second part is I wear a raincoat and it describes the result of the first if part. So when the first part of the sentence or the situation happens, the second part of the sentence is the result. We know this because we use the word if. So let's think. How many parts to the sentence? 2. Are they connected? Yes. Which part describes the situation, the part with if? Which part is the result of the situation, the part without if, the second part? Is it a single event or general fact? It's a general fact. This means conditional sentences describing facts have 2 parts, the if part and the result part. When the if part happens, the connected part is the result. Some other examples of factual conditionals are if the train is delayed, I get to work late, and if you score more goals, you win the match. Remember, this form describes facts that are always true. When we want to talk about a possible result for a specific action, we use a different form. Let's look at the future if. If it rains tomorrow, I will wear a raincoat. This sentence describes a single future situation and result. Again, it's made up of 2 parts. The first part is if it rains and describes the situation. The second part is I will wear a raincoat and describes the result of the if part. When the first part happens, the second part is the result. We know this because we use the word if. So let's think. How many parts to this sentence? 2. Are they connected? Yes. Which part describes the situation, the if part? Which part is the result, the will part? So future conditional sentences have 2 parts, the if part and the result part, just like factual conditionals. When the if part happens, the following part is the result. The important difference between factual and future conditionals is future conditionals describe single specific future situations. Factual conditionals describe general facts, not a specific single future event. Some other examples of future conditionals are if you don't leave soon, you will be late for work, and if he drives too fast, I will be sick. Remember, this form describes the future. When we want to talk about an imaginary result for a specific action, we use a different form. So let's look at the imaginary if. If I won the jackpot, I would buy a Ferrari. This sentence describes a single imaginary situation and result. Again, it's made up of 2 parts. The first part, if I won the jackpot, describes the situation, and the second part, I would buy a Ferrari, describes the result of the if part in exactly the same way as the other examples we've seen so far. However, there's a very important difference here. Imaginary conditionals are exactly that. You imagine them. They're a dream. They're not real and are considered to be impossible or extremely unlikely to happen. Because of this, we often use them to describe dreams and imaginary situations. So let's think. How many parts to the sentence? 2. Are they connected? Yes. Which part describes the situation? The if part. Which part is the result? The would part. And is it likely to happen? No, almost impossible. Remember, the important difference that defines imaginary conditionals is they're not real and they're extremely unlikely to happen. Some other examples of imaginary conditionals are, if I were you, I would eat less sugar, and if he worked harder, he would pass his exams. So we can use the word if to talk about present and future situations and also possible or imaginary conditions. But what about the past? Well, let's have a look. If you had told me about the show, I would have bought tickets. This sentence describes a single past situation and result. Again, it's made up of two parts. The if part, if you had told me, describes the past situation, and the second part, I would have bought tickets, describes the result of the if part in exactly the same way as the other examples we've seen. So let's think. How many parts to the sentence? 2. Are they connected? Yes. Which part describes the situation, the if part, and which part is the result, the would have part? Is it past, present, or future? Definitely past. Often, past conditionals are used to express regret or something you wish had happened, such as, if I had studied more, I would have passed my exams. And they can also often contain negatives, such as, if my car had not broken down, I would have arrived on time. And if I had known you were going to be late, I would not have waited for you. Remember, all three of these examples express regret, but the two with the negative parts emphasize or focus on the negative action. It's a subtle difference, but it's an important one. Now, let me ask you a question. Can you change the sentence order in if sentences? You guessed it, the answer is yes. This can happen with all four types of conditional sentence and is always possible. Let's have a look. If it rains, I wear a raincoat. I wear a raincoat if it rains. If it rains tomorrow, I will wear a raincoat. I will wear a raincoat if it rains tomorrow. If I won the jackpot, I would buy a Ferrari. I would buy a Ferrari if I won the jackpot. If you had told me about the show, I would have bought tickets. I would have bought tickets if you had told me about the show. The good news is the meaning in each case is exactly the same, but just remember to remove the comma when the if part is second. Lastly, as you may have noticed, when using imaginary conditionals, the verb to be in the if part is always in the form were, as shown throughout this video. It's unique to imaginary conditionals. For example, if I were, if you were, if she were, if we were, if they were. However, some native speakers use the colloquial form was for first and third person, so you'll see it occasionally, but in most cases it's best to use the correct form were. Now, we've seen there are different forms for each conditional, so how do we form them? Well, when talking about factual conditionals, we always use if plus the present tense and then present tense again. If it rains, I wear a raincoat. When talking about future conditionals, we always use if plus present tense and then will plus the bare infinitive. If it rains tomorrow, I will wear a raincoat. When talking about imaginary conditionals, we always use if plus past tense and then would plus bare infinitive. If I won the jackpot, I would buy a Ferrari. And when talking about past conditionals, we always use if plus past perfect and then would plus have plus past participle. If you had told me about the show, I would have bought tickets. In regards to English pronunciation, we always contract the verb forms. For example, I will wear a raincoat becomes I'll wear a raincoat. I would buy a Ferrari becomes I'd buy a Ferrari. And if I had known you were going to be late, I would not have waited for you becomes if I'd known you were going to be late, I wouldn't have waited for you. These contractions are common when speaking, but be careful when writing. In most cases, they're fine, except contractions like gonna. It's very informal and should only be used when writing slang or direct speech emphasizing pronunciation. So, to summarize, if sentences are called conditionals. They have two parts, a situation and a result. They can be fact, future, imaginary, or past, and always contract the verb forms. To find out more about learning English for Cambridge and IELTS exams, business and work, or general conversation, visit ParrotandWolf.com.